All right, guys, I'm really pumped up for this guest because I think he's covering what's probably the most intriguing market to cover during training camp from a quarterback perspective, which is New England. So we've got Evan Lazar. He's a Patriots beat reporter for CLNS Media, but he's also the host of the Patriots Beat podcast. So make sure you guys go and check that out. Evan, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem, Tim. And my next guest on the Patriots Beat podcast is going to be yours truly. So we're going to do a little home and home. You pick my brain, I pick your brain. I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm pumped up because this is, it's cool for me because I can watch all the film, but we have locations in Colorado, Arizona, and Texas. I have no idea what Patriots fans are thinking, right? I talk to them sporadically, but you have a good sense of it. Give everybody an idea. What is it like right now, in the Boston, greater New England area? What is everyone thinking in terms of, I'm sure it's divided, but kind of just what's the general sense in the fan base right now between Cam and Mac?
Honestly, I think it's all over the map because I think there's a lot of Patriots fans that were a little bit disappointed that it was Mac Jones and not Justin Fields on draft night, right? So I think you have a section of Patriots fans that are still a little bit skeptical of Mac Jones, anointing Mac Jones as the next guy, right? And really giving him that heir apparent type of tag because maybe they didn't think of him too highly before the draft or are concerned about all the supporting cast talent that he had at Alabama and is it going to convert to the NFL? And there's some skepticism, I think, from a certain section of the fan base. Then there is a lot of fans, I would say, that are tired of watching Cam Newton throw the football because of how he looked last year. So those fans are just anybody but Cam, right? Whether it's Mac Jones, it's Jared Stidham, whoever. Just give us somebody that is a better passer than Cam Newton. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot about Cam's struggles last year. But when you go from the GOAT, when you go from Tom Brady to an inconsistent mechanical passer like Cam Newton, it's like it does feel like you're watching varsity versus JV a little bit at times, right? It's such a stark contrast in playing style and just physical tools of what makes Cam good and what makes Brady good that for Patriots fans whose eyes are kind of trained for the last 20 years to watch a quarterback like Brady, just that efficient, methodical, just expert level quarterback play, to go from that to big arm mobile Cam Newton, it's kind of like where are we going with this, right? So there's a lot of fans, there's a quiet support for Cam Newton, I would say, but the vast majority of fans now fall in the anybody but Cam or Mac skepticism territory, I would say, at the moment. And then there's obviously a fourth group that are all in on Mac Jones and just can't wait to see the rookie.
Yeah, there's so many interesting things that you just brought up because there's just such a drastic difference between what Tom Brady's good at and I kind of think what Mac is good at is more similar compared to Cam. And what I found interesting when I went and watched all the New England tape from this year was there were, of course, the run game wrinkles that they put in for Cam, but you can look at that in a vacuum and throw that out. The pass game, by and large, stayed the same.
Yeah.
And I don't think, it's one of those things that's tough because I wonder if it would have stayed the same if they would have had full OTAs in a normal training camp, or if they kind of felt like, listen, now I just have to catch Cam up versus, making sure all the receivers are on the same page. But it is interesting because I do think that was kind of my next question I had for you is how do you build a system with these two quarterbacks in mind because they are good at such drastically different things? Let's remove the run game because we all know Cam can run and Matt can't, but even just as passers, they're so different. What's the biggest challenge? You break down a ton of tape. I've loved all your tape segments. What's kind of what do you see as the biggest challenge when it comes to just installing a system for these two guys?
Well, I think the biggest challenge for the Patriots last year was, like you said, they are kind of forcing a round hole into a square peg at times with Cam Newton, right? They're trying to figure out, okay, what adaptations can we make here on the fly? We didn't have OTAs. We didn't have a big training camp. We didn't have preseason games. And a lot of the things that I saw with Cam, because a lot of people in Boston have chalked Cam's struggles up, he can't throw. right? He can't throw a
Right.
football. He's washed. It's over. He throws dirt balls. All this kind of stuff about his accuracy and things like that. But what I saw with Cam was more so decision making and timing within the
Yeah.
framework of the offense than his inability to actually put the ball in the correct place it's more of a mental thing, and Cam talked about that a lot, from the fact that he had basically no offseason and kind of had a crash course in this very, very advanced passing system, to the fact that he then got COVID in season and had a
Yeah.
kind of a couple-week lull there in the season because of his COVID diagnosis. He never really fully grasped the system. And I think that when you look at Mac, look, everybody talks about the cerebralness or what's between the ears with Mac Jones, and he's going to have this ability to come in and really absorb information and learn the playbook, and that's what he did at Alabama. But I think that they have to get to a nice comfort level with the fact that nobody is going to be able to master the system like Tom Brady did
Yeah.
until we're 4 or 5 years into the system and beyond, right? Mac Jones as a rookie is not going to come in and be 20-year Brady, right? Cam
Yeah.
Newton isn't going to come in and do the same thing. So it's simplifying it, but also not losing some of the complexities that make it a great scheme. So it's kind of a hard balance, right? Of trying to figure out, how do we get these quarterbacks comfortable, but how do we also not lose the foundation that we've built over the last 20 years? And Mac, I think, is a little bit more, at least at Alabama. And look, when you're throwing to Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, you're going to throw deep a lot more than when you're
Yeah.
throwing to the guys the Patriots have, or the Patriots had out there last year. So Mac definitely was a little bit more intermediate and vertical shots than what the old school Brady is led to believe. The quick game stuff and the get the ball out in 2.5 seconds and get it quickly to Julian Edelman or Wes Welker or whatever the case may be. So in order to make these two guys fit though together, it's a really fascinating question, because I do think Cam is a little bit more equipped for a vertical based passing system as well. But my guess is they see a guy in Mac Jones who makes really quick decisions with the football, can see things pre-snap to decipher things and pick on matchups and stuff like that, and maybe isn't necessarily going to be a vertical passer in the league same way he was at Alabama. The one thing that I'm writing about, because Benjamin Solak and Mark Schofield, those guys, they've talked a lot about this isn't a 1-for-1 fit with Mac Jones into the Patriots offense, right? It's not like you can just take what Mac Jones did at Alabama and say it's exactly the same as what the Patriots did with Tom Brady, because it's not. But the one element of the game that they used a little bit more last year, quite a bit more, was RPOs. And not all the RPOs that they ran with Cam Newton featured a quarterback run element. Some of them were just those standard pass or handed off type of RPOs. And that's obviously something that Mac Jones is really comfortable with doing. So I think that they can continue in that respect. They can overlap it with Cam and Mac Jones, that if they continue some of the RPO elements, some of the new age elements that they did put in there last year for Cam, not the run stuff, but the pass stuff, that is going to be comfortable for Mac Jones. So I do wonder if, some of the under center stuff that they've done in the past. Mac Jones didn't really have a ton of experience under center in college. They're more of like a pistol shotgun offense now at Alabama. I think that there is some carryover from those two guys, but I also do think that, look, you're not going to scheme up a read option. You're not going to scheme up a quarterback draw or a QB power counter like the Patriots ran a bunch last year. So it's the passing game, I think, is definitely going to fit Mac better earlier on than it ever did with Cam. And now you just kind of have to dress it up a little bit differently, because I don't think Mac Jones necessarily has a ton of experience from under center, or a ton of experience with under center play action, turning his back to the defense, making a decision. He did a lot of more of like pistol shotgun RPO type of stuff at Alabama. So I would like to see them continue to build on that this year as they did last year.
The nice thing that I think is going to help is I do think the Patriots do so much where they actually utilize the back as a primary receiver, which I think Alabama did a ton of. So to
Yeah.
me, it's like there is a lot of running back utilization. And the nice thing that I think, or I don't want to say the nice thing, but the easier thing with what New England does from under center run action is they really design everything to hit that like bender from their tight end or
Right.
the quick glance from the receiver. It's not really like, hey, we want you to go through this run action and then read this out. It's more or less, and Brady made it famous, right? The trap pass and then bang it to Gronk.
Right.
Like it's all the same. Those are relatively easier concepts than say. But I do think it's hard, man, because there are so many people try. I think there were so many people. This is my honest opinion. I think there were so many people that were so hard on Mac Jones through the eval process
Yeah.
that when he got taken at 15 by a great franchise, then everyone was like, "Oh, how could I make it seem worse than it is?" And it's not. Like no kid's perfect. There's no college offense that fits in NFL. Everyone's trying to make Trey Lance and San Fran into a great fit, and it's like based on what? North
Right.
Dakota State probably calls that like fake 42 shallow. And if
Yeah.
that's like Shanahan's like first three words of a paragraph, like nothing's a perfect fit. So
Right.
it's always hard when you're looking at that stuff. But I do think there's a lot of similarities from what Alabama did that I do think expedites his learning curve in New England. But it is going to be, I think the Cam Newton thing is going to be fascinating because if Cam plays like he did at the beginning of the season, you got to think that it's going to be really competitive during training camp.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, you give us because you saw the body of work as it was unfolding. What you see from Cam last year? Was it just was it almost kind of like fool's gold at the beginning? Was it kind of like false hope? Kind of how'd you see the whole season play out for him?
I would definitely say that from a fan perspective, I'm sure that a lot of fans felt like that, right? Week one, they come out against Miami. Cam ran it, I think it was 16 times
Yeah,
off of like, quarterback power, draw, read option, all this stuff that the Patriots unveil. And we saw a little bit of it in training camp. We're not actually allowed to report on. Like I can, go out there at training camp and see, oh, they're running zone read or oh, they're running power read here. I'm not allowed to say that, right? So we
yeah,
knew that this stuff was kind of coming, but all we could kind of say was that there's a run element involved for Cam, right? And it's really kind of dicey with the rules of how much scheme you can really get into in your
yeah,
reporting. So we sort of knew that it was coming, but even I didn't expect them to go that hard towards it, right? I thought that, oh, maybe they have some goal line stuff, maybe they'd have some short yardage stuff. But when they came out and he was the primary ball carrier and like a focal point of their running game, I was like, okay, this is a really different offense, right? And then I think what happened is they realized that all that stuff is all well and good, but at some point in time, you have to execute a drop back passing game in this league,
yeah,
right? At some point in time, it's going to be you're going to be down, or it's going to be the fourth quarter, and you're going to have to put together a drive, and it's really hard to kind of do the smoke and mirrors, in those types of instances to go 80 yards down the field in a 2-minute drill, right? You're going to have to get some sort of drop back passing game out of him, and I think that's when we started to see the struggles of his comfortability in the system, his consistency. Because look, this is an offense on top of all the option routes and all the stuff that you have to learn in terms of the mental side of it. This is an offense that is predicated on efficiency and precision, right? You need to be a precise, accurate passer consistently, down in and down out, not just sometimes, right? And when you
yeah.
are just sometimes, it gets like it was last year. So I actually think Cam played really well in the first 2 weeks of the season. That game against Seattle, I remember coming out of that game, even though they lost, thinking, wow, if Cam Newton gives them this, then they have something here. They could win 9, 10, 11
You're
games with that.
You're telling me I had him as quarterback in fantasy. After Seattle, I was like,
Yeah.
I got to steal.
Yeah, exactly. We're all talking at that point about, dang, do they need to sign Cam Newton to a contract extension before he gets too pricey to keep him, right? Then he gets COVID and everything just sort of went off the rails. He started playing a little bit better. I'd say weeks 9 through 11, that stretch, they had that big win against Baltimore at Gillette where he played pretty well. But a lot of what they did to do that is when they went to their drop back passing game, it was extremely stripped down from what they normally do. And he's reading only half the field, or he only really has two routes that he's kind of has to choose from. And they got away from that full field progression, five guys into the pattern. Everybody's got an option. All that kind of stuff. They sort of went away from that, and they got a little bit more simplified. And then I think by weeks 12 through 17, all these defenses are like they're running two routes. All these routes are locked. They're running two guys up the field. It's Jacoby Myers and Demir Bird. It's not like it's Randy Moss and Wes Welker out here. Like this is easy to stop once we figure out what exactly it is that they're doing, and then it became a problem. And I think that again, they can get good passing game production out of Cam by leaning into his strengths as a passer, but to expect him to understand the scheme at that high of a mental level, and then B, to be able to be as consistent as Brady was, where the read is right every single time, the ball is in the right spot 90% of the time. It's just that was kind of lofty. And I think that they do need to sort of, even for Mac, when that time comes, they can't expect that kind of level of quarterback play from the QB. And they do put a lot on the quarterback here. There's a lot of pre-snap information to process. There's a lot of post-snap information to process. People say it's difficult for the wide receivers to play here. It's even harder for the quarterback because he's got option routes all over the field that he's got to figure out. The wide receiver just got to break off of leverage, right? He just got to go down the field. This guy's sitting inside of me. I'm going to break outside. Boom, done. The quarterback has to think, okay, that guy's breaking outside. This receiver's route converts like that. That receiver's route converts like this. The coverage is rotating like that. Okay, so where do I go, right? And that's when the ball gets held in the pocket. That's when Cam, you can see it. Like you could see the tires turning in his head. Like, like the gears are turning. Like what the coverage is spinning. The routes are changing. Where am I going here? And just sort of that uncertainty and that kind of level of distrust in himself of knowing the system led to a lot of struggles. So I'm really fascinated to see because those things are technically fixable, right? Like he could, with a full off season, he's been in the playbook for a while now. He's going to have OTAs, he's going to have training camp, he's going to have preseason games, 3 of them. Those things are theoretically fixable. And if he can get up to speed and if he can figure out the mental aspects of it, I think he still has the physical ability to be a good quarterback in the NFL, especially when you add in how much he can bring to the table as a runner.
What I saw in the film too that I thought was super interesting was I almost saw his struggles multiply with when they would condense the set. And I honestly think it's just because he hasn't. New England's so exotic from the way they get in and out of bunch and what we call duet, which is where you bring 2 guys tight on both sides.
Right.
They're so exotic with that, but Cam never did. At Auburn, they didn't do it. In Carolina, they kept it a majority of it spread and expand the defense. So, and you just create so many different sight lines for a quarterback because defenses can hide pressure so much better when you're in a condensed set. And I also think that added to when I was watching the tape, there were so many times where it was like there was a free runner at him.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of
that a lot too. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't
well,
know.
I think a lot of it is he wasn't manipulating the mic to account for it like Brady was doing the year before.
Right.
But he had just never seen, hey, here's how they can trap this pressure because I'm in bunch. So hopefully that gets better. And but it is just watching it, breaking it down and trying to peel away the layers, you could tell how exotic the system is. And you can tell everything's based on a coverage look. And that just, again, it's more and more variables like you're talking about, where then all of a sudden he holds the ball. And sometimes that's to his advantage because then he'll make somebody miss and there's a big play.
Right.
It's just really hard to replicate that week in and week out. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge with Cam versus maybe Mac. I think Mac is probably going to really dominate that kind of modified quick game that Brady made famous, the basic with the option route underneath that New England basically patented. But I do think there's a lot that there's just flashes of Cam, though, that I could just see as a coach it being so hard to make the switch.
It was.
It's like
we all thought it was coming at multiple points last year. We're all thinking, how bad can Jarrett Stidham possibly be? right? Like,
Yeah.
how bad could it possibly be? Not saying that Cam was so bad that he deserved to be benched, but just to give the kid a shot, right? Just to see
Yeah.
if he can play, because they're not going to make the playoffs. We're in week 16 and they have that primetime game against Buffalo where they're already mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, and that week 17 game against the Jets, and they won't even put Stidham in the game. And so we're just thinking to ourselves, why? Why not just give the kid a chance to see what he can do? But I'm really glad that you brought up the pre-snap pressure and stuff like that, because that was such a big problem for them last year, was getting everybody blocked and getting everybody on the same page when they did bring pressure. That and Cam got blamed for a lot of it, right? Because we're so used to Brady coming up to the line of scrimmage, and nowadays with all the microphones out there, you can hear him calling out the mic and hear him changing up the protection and hear him adjusting with David Andrews, the center, and making sure that everybody is sliding the right way or stepping the right way or whatever. And you just didn't see any of that with Cam. Like, he just came to the line. He surveyed maybe the safeties or something like that to see what kind of shell he was working with, and they snapped the ball. And there was the communication at the line of scrimmage was nowhere near close to what we're used to here with the Patriots. So even the layman, like even casual fans, could say, well, why isn't Cam Newton talking as much at the line of scrimmage as
Yeah.
Brady was? Why is there so many unblocked blitzers compared to what there normally was? And a lot of that was because they were failing to get that protection set, and he was failing to see pressure. They lost games because of it. There was big moments late in games where teams just brought pressure at the Patriots, double edged pressure or whatever the case may be, and they just didn't get it blocked,
Yeah.
and they just lost games because of it.
It's amazing how much, and I could imagine if I was Josh McDaniels, I'd just be like furious in my office. But it was amazing how much teams brought legitimate cover zero, because you rarely
Yeah,
see that in the NFL. The NFL is all about cover one. Hey, we're going to put one guy deep just in case you guys pick it up and get it.
right,
Teams were bringing legit cover zero, no one back, man across. We're going to be +1 in the blitz. It like I hadn't seen. I basically watch every single snap, it feels like, at the NFL. This was the first team, the Miami week 1 game, that it was like multiple times in a game, and then it just kept coming after that. And I honestly think it kept coming because there was a play in the Miami game that Cam makes a check to like smoke screen with a go, and against zero, he throws the smoke screen, which isn't a negative play, right? It ends up in a 4-yard gain. But you want to attack cover zero because you want D coordinators to be worried about it.
right,
But he missed, and it's like we're talking about. It should have been like a full, hey, check to the smoke, Ricky, slide the line right, float right, and throw the go.
right,
And it just wasn't there. And I tried to say, okay, let me give him some slack because it's week 1. But then it shows up again in week 9, and it's hard, right? Because then you start saying, okay, if we're 9 weeks in, either Cam's not doing it or Josh has for some reason decided to not give it to him, which again, then that would be a problem. So there's a lot that I think when you really look at the tape, you pull away a lot more than, the dirt balls, right, are frustrating, but Brady threw his fair share of, prairie dog killers, right? That's what we call them, right?
yeah,
Brady had his own too, but it's just everything else. Every quarterback does that. So, but when you unwind the tape and really look at it, there's some stuff that's probably more worrisome for Cam. The last thing before I let you go that I'd love to get your opinion on, because I don't really want to make you pick, hey, who wins this job? What I'd rather, you've seen both these guys, you're going to cover. What do you think? What's the path for each one to win the job? Yeah, I'm always fascinated because in Denver, that's a big discussion with Drew Lock and Teddy
right.
Bridgewater. And having watched both of them, there's a path for both to win the job. What do you think I start with Cam. What's his path to winning this job? What could he show that's improved? And then kind of get to Mac and how he would win the job.
I would say with Cam, it's a lot of the stuff that you just mentioned, right? Cleaning up a lot of the pre-snap stuff and being able to put more on his shoulders from a game calling perspective, right? Being able to call out the blitz, being able to slide protection, being able to sniff things out pre-snap to know where your answers are. I think that those are sort of the mental things because, like you mentioned, and a lot of Patriots fans get super caught up in the dirt balls. Like all the time, you just hear like Cam can't throw a football anymore. All he's throwing all these balls in the dirt. His ball is all no. But if you take the amount of dirt balls that he threw is probably like 5% of the total passes that he actually attempted. But 5% up from 2.5% with Tom Brady is noticeable for people, right? So it just that increase makes it noticeable. But like you said, it's all the other stuff that's way more worrisome. I'm not worried that every 10 throws that Cam Newton makes is a bad one. Like that's just NFL quarterback play, regardless. Like we're just so used to seeing Brady be basically perfect for 20 years that like the second that we see a guy that's a little bit worse than that, we're like, what is this, right? So I argue about that with people all the time that get caught up in the dirt balls and say, we got these people on the radio here in Boston. He can't throw. It's like, no, he can throw a football. Like it's not that. Like it's just all the other stuff that goes into the quarterback play. If Cam can get some of that stuff down, where they can put more on his plate and it's a little bit more of a cleaner operation, then I think that he can be still an NFL starter in this system and be a productive one. And in a lot of ways, look, they signed a bunch of guys in free agency that are going to make their skill positions better, but still playing 11 on 11 with the quarterback being able to run, they don't have weapons like Kansas City does. They don't have weapons like Tampa Bay does. The tight ends are nice. Nelson Aguilar is a nice piece, but they're not rolling out Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and all of these guys, right? So they still could benefit a lot, I think, from playing 11 on 11. And at some point, if Matt Jones does end up being the better passer of the two, I'm not going to say that they're going to go full split to quarterback, college style. Like I use like the Chris Leak, Tim Tebow comparison. I'm not saying they're going to go all the way that direction, but could they do Drew Brees, Taysom Hill at some point and have a package in there for Cam Newton every week to utilize his legs on the goal? I mean, this guy rushed for 12 touchdowns last year. So he can still be a productive runner, even if Mac is a better passer. Now, for Mac, I really think that doing all the things now, look, he's not going to have the mastery of the scheme like he did at Alabama down right away, but doing all the things that he did at Alabama in terms of, like what Sarkisian would talk about, the quick eyes and the quick decision making and the accuracy to all three levels and the pre-snap stuff that he was able to pull out at Alabama. If that all translates to the NFL game and all of the little details that Mac Jones was really good at Alabama, if all that translates to the Patriots offense, I think it's going to be tough to keep him off the field because he's going to be somebody that is going to look a whole lot more comfortable and a whole lot more natural in the traditional Patriots offense than somebody like Cam Newton ever would have, even in 2015, even in prime Cam Newton years, it's still not a stylistic fit like Mac Jones is when Mac Jones is at his best. So I think that for Cam, it's a lot of the mental stuff. For Mac Jones, I think it's more of just is my toolbox going to translate to the pro game, right? And how quickly can I get it to go there? Because he's going to have to win with his brain a lot of the time because he's not going to take off running. He's not going to throw an 80-yard bomb like he's Josh Allen. So he's going to have to do some of those little things correct. And how quickly can he be able to do that in a new system at a higher, degree of difficulty in terms of the NFL compared to college? That's going to be really fascinating, but I can't wait to watch these two battle it out because they are so different, right? So it's going to be fascinating to see what the coaching staff thinks and what like you said, are they able to put some things in early for Cam that they can still do when Mac Jones Mac's eventually going to take over, whether it's week 8, it's next year, they draft him 15th overall. He's eventually going to be the guy at some point or get the chance to be the guy. So we'll see what happens. But Cam, it's all mental to me. It's none of it's physical, all that dirt ball mechanics, footwork, all that we get way too caught up in that sometimes. This is going to be about mental for both guys, personally, I think.
Evan, man, I appreciate you. That was so awesome. We got to get you back on during the preseason to give us the update. So Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. Everybody, make sure you're following Evan on Twitter. Make sure you're checking out, subscribe to their podcast. And thank you so much for coming on, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tim.